Morning. Welcome back. So this is part 3 of the restoration of this Hohner Carmen 24 bass. So what I've done is I've taken all the reeds out, and we've got the high set and the lower set for the tremolo tuning for the reeds, and the reed block is just here. And what I have actually, I've just cleaned it up. So I've taken the excess wax off, and I've used a little knife just for scraping, pen knife, and just sandpaper, just to get it really nice and smooth. So just get all the wax off, get it as clean as possible, and then that's going to be ready for the waxing. I'm going to wax the reeds back in. Okay, so here are all the reeds, and what I've also done is I've just gone through the reeds and had a look at the tip height, so the height between the end of the reed and the zinc plate, and I'm just looking to see if any of them are choking, so that the reed actually, the tip is almost flush with the reed plate, or if it's too high. And as a rule of thumb, it should be about the thickness of the reed itself gap between the reed tip and the reed plate. So I've just gone through and checked those, and then you can then, if you need to, adjust the height of that. And basically you have to use maybe a fine blade to get underneath the reed and then put it about halfway up, and then you just have to bend carefully to increase the tip height, or to decrease the tip height. What I would normally do is just get a flat blade screwdriver, and again about halfway down the reed you just have to push down and physically bend it, and again being very, very careful, because this is where you can cause damage, which you don't really want to do. So that's all done. So the next step is to valve all the reeds. Now to do that, if I just show you what I've got here, I can spin this around a little bit. So just here I've got 6 little trays of reeds of different sizes, and these are all vinyl reeds with multi-layers, and so which is what I use on the majority of my restorations. And what I want to do now is just to work out which reeds I'm going to use, which valves I'm going to use for each reed. Because of all the reeds go down in size, you can't use the same valve for every reed, because if you use too big a reed valve on a reed, it will be too heavy for the reed, it won't open and close easily, and also it could be too wide, and you have to chop it down quite a bit. So the idea is to try to work out which of the reeds valves, which are different sizes, would fit best. So on this little set of reeds here, I'll probably use 4 or 5 different sizes of valves, just depending on the size of the reed. So for the lowest bass reed, not bass reeds, but the lowest reeds, the lowest notes, I think I'm going to go for this valve here, which is quite a big valve. And what I'm looking for, as I'm, oops, he just dropped on the floor, as I'm putting the valve against the reed, I'm just making sure that valve looks correct for that reed. So it's not too wide, not too narrow, and I can definitely cover the length of the slot. This will need a little bit of trimming, but this to me looks just about right. But you need a bit of trimming. So what I'm going to do is put the 2 valves next to that reed, because I know that I'm going to have to do both sides of the reed. And as I go up, I'll put those 2 there, as I go up the kind of reeds there, I will be changing the valves depending on the size of the reed. So I'll be putting them in pairs all the way along, apart from the last 4. So the last 4 reeds didn't have any valves on. I often find this on accordions, so the highest reeds don't need any valves on them, so you'll often see that the last few will be unvalved. So the last 4 in this case are not going to need any valves. So what I'll do, I'm going to go around, go up the line and pair up my my valves with the reeds, and once I've done that I'll just show you what I've done. Okay, so I've got all the valves ready with the reeds, and the next step is to glue the valves on. So what I've got a little pot here which I'm just going to put the glue on top of, and the glue I'm going to use is, this is Boterm, B-O-T-E-R, it's RM, it's a shoe glue, and it's virtually identical to the Hohner valve glue, it's just cheaper. So it's a kind of shoe glue really, but it works really, really well. Now when I glue them on, what I'm going to do is get the valve, and I'm going to, if you imagine the thickness of the valve, I'm going to make like a square on the end, so it's kind of like a square of glue, so the same length and width as the thickness of the valve, if you like. So a little kind of square of glue, and then I'm going to just put the valve butted against the rivet, making sure it's nice and straight, not too close to the edge, and then I'll just leave it to dry while I just carry on with all the rest of the reeds. So I'm just going to get that one nicely glued on so it's nice and straight. And I'm going to go along the line and do one side, and then once I've had a little chance to just make sure the glue is dry, turn them over, do the other side, and then at the end I'm going to trim the valves back so that they are matching the right exact length that need to be. So I'll just do some gluing, show you what, excuse me, show you what it looks like in a sec. Okie dokie, so here we go. I've got all of the reeds now lined up, and they've all been valved. So I've got my higher and lower ones, and all I'm going to do next is take a nice sharp pair of scissors, and I'm going to trim the valves. So I'll show you on this one here, I can see that. So the valve itself is now sticking over the end of the slot. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to trim with my sharp scissors just about 1 millimetre over the end of the slot. And then what I'm also going to do, I'm going to trim the same amount that I've trimmed off the valve from the layer. It's got 3 layers, one of the layers which are there to support, keep the valve flat. I'm going to trim the same amount I've trimmed off the valve itself off one of the supporting layers as well, so just to make sure that the valve still operates pretty nicely. So I'm going to do the trimming, so I'm going to just carefully with my sharp scissors just about 1 millimetre off, and then I'm going to trim the same amount off from the second layer. See, you've got to get the scissors underneath. I'm going to trim the same amount off there. Job done. Okay, so I'm going to go around all of the valves and do all the trimming with my sharp scissors just to make sure that they're all really the right length for the slot on the reed plate. So there we go. All the valves are now being attached, trimmed, and they're ready for waxing. Now what I'm going to do next is prepare the reed block for waxing. So I'm just going to push those carefully over to here. Now I'll show you this. So I've got the reed block which I cleaned up nicely, all sanded and cleaned. But there's one thing I want to check, and that is if the bottom face of the reed block is nice and flat, because sometimes what can happen that these can get a little bit warped, a little bit uneven. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to just see how flat this is. I'll show you how I do that. So let me just get myself a pencil. So I'll put that down for a second, get that pencil. And with a pencil I'm going to put some little lines, hatchings, on the reed block with my pencil. So just put some little lines all the way down, little diagonal lines just lightly with the pencil. And then what I'm going to do is get a flat surface with some sandpaper attached to it to see how flat this is. So if I just finish off doing my little marks, so basically you just want to mark with pencil all the way along, and then what I'm going to use is, let's get it, this. So what I've got here, if I just bring it into shot, it's a mirror, and I've put some double-sided carpet tape on the mirror and then some 120 grit sandpaper on top of the mirror. So that's giving me a nice flat base. So if I then just run my reed block along the sandpaper, I know that it's running along a completely flat surface, because the mirror being made with glass on the top layer is going to be completely flat. So if I just rub this up and down the sandpaper, holding it in the middle like so, and then if I have a look at the pencil marks on the reed block, any parts of the reed block which are warped, and so you've got a dip or something in the wood, those pencil marks will still be there, and the high points will be rubbed off. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to keep going until all the pencil marks have gone, and then I know that I've got a nice and flat surface on the base. So I'm just going to keep going like this. Getting there, mostly nearly gone. Just keep going. Whoa, getting on well. Just a little bit more. There we go. Right, just put that down for a sec. So the reed block has now got all the pencil marks off, so I'm happy that's a nice flat surface. So that's now ready for the wax. Okay, so there we go. So on this little video called how to take the reeds off, clean them up, revalve them, trim the valves, and just made sure the base of the reed block is nice and flat. So that'll be enough just for this little video, and then the next one I'm going to get the wax out and start re-waxing the reeds into the reed block. Okay, so I hope you found it useful, and thanks for watching.